don't know who Jack is, but this block is traditionally called Jack's Blocks. So today I'm going to show you how to make it. Welcome to Epida Studio. My name is Elizabeth and I help you make beautiful things with quilting, pojagi, and embroidery. So this quilt block is traditionally called Jack's Blocks. And I'm not sure exactly why it's called that, but it could be that these little corner pieces are kind of like tumbling blocks. With the dark and the light, it kind of gives a 3D effect. So that could be where the name Jack's Blocks comes from. So this block will finish at 5 inches, so it is a small block, and it looks like there's a lot of teeny tiny triangles in it. But don't worry, I'm going to show you how to make this using easy construction techniques. So if you're ready, let's get started. So for this block, you're going to need 4 different fabrics: a dark, a light, a neutral background, and then a contrasting color. So from the dark fabric, you're going to need 9 1.5 inch squares, and then from the light fabric, you're going to need 8 1.5 inch squares. From the contrasting fabric, you're going to need 8 1.5 inch squares. So I'm using a light red and a dark red, and then I have this blue as contrast. And then for the background, you're going to need 4 1.5 by 3.5 inch rectangles. And I'm just using this plain white fabric. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to use these background rectangles, and we're going to use a technique called snowballing sometimes. And that is where we take a square and we put it on the end of this piece, and then we stitch from corner to corner on that square, and then fold the edge back so that it's like adding a half square triangle onto the edge of this piece. And on 2 of these, we're going to add the contrasting fabric onto the side, and on the other 2, we're going to add the dark fabric onto it. So here you can see I've stitched from corner to corner. So now I'm going to cut off the edge of that corner, and I'm just eyeballing 1/4 inch. It doesn't have to be too exact. And then I will fold that back and I'll press it, and it will look like this. So I have this strip and it has this half square triangle in the corner. So I'm making 2 blue and 2 red, and then I'm going to add another square onto the other side. Now I want to make sure that on this one I'm stitching this way from corner to corner, so that when I fold it back, it will look like this. So if you remember your shapes from elementary school days, you want this white piece to be a trapezoid. You don't want to make your stitches parallel so that it looks like this and it's a parallelogram. You don't want that. You want the stitching to go in opposite directions. So when they're done, you'll have these nice pieces with trapezoids and 2 blue and 2 red, or whatever colors you're using. And then we're going to need to make some half square triangles. And for those, I'm going to be using the other 1.5 inch squares. And I'm using what I call the easiest ever method. Now this isn't normally the method I'd use for half square triangles, but I use it for this because these pieces are quite small. And so to make this, you put your 2 triangles right sides together and then stitch from corner to corner, and then just like the other ones, you'll trim off the excess and then fold it back. So you can see a full tutorial for how to do this. Now, if I'm making larger half square triangles, I probably wouldn't use this method if I was making 4 inch or 6 inch half square triangles, because the little corner that you cut off is going to be wasted fabric. But in this case, because they're so small, then this is the method that I use, because the waist is a pretty small piece, and with this method, it's easy to make them accurately. So we're going to make 4 half square triangles with the dark fabric and the contrasting fabric. So here I've stitched my two pieces together from corner to corner. So now I'm going to just cut off that corner, just like with the other pieces. It's basically the same way. And see, this is the tiny scrap that I have left over. So that's why I feel comfortable using this method with these tiny squares. And then I will be able to press it, and there's my half square triangle. And there's no need to trim it up. It should already be 1.5 inches square. So I'm going to have 4 of these. So now that I've made all my pieces, I can start laying out the block. So this block has a dark square right in the middle. So there should be 1 dark square left over. And then on north, south, east, and west, we are putting a light square. And then in these corners, we're going to put the half square triangles. And the half square triangles, the diagonal line is coming out from the middle of the square, and I'm putting them not rotating around like a pinwheel, but I'm putting them so these two are the dark fabric, these two are the contrasting fabric. So that one will go this way. So then dark fabric, contrasting fabric. And then on top of that, we're going to put these trapezoid pieces so that these fabrics will match. So this is just giving you an idea of what the final block is going to look like, and to make sure we've done all our pieces correctly. Because if we need to fix anything, it's easier to fix them now than when we start joining these pieces together. And then in the corner is going to go a light fabric square. So to assemble this, we're going to start assembling the middle. And you might have noticed that this is a 9 patch block. It's 3 across and 3 down. So we're going to assemble it just the way we would assemble a 9 patch block. We're going to sew those pieces into rows and then sew the rows together. But just double check to make sure that everything is in the right orientation, because it's a little bit unusual and it's not super intuitive. We're not putting the squares all kind of going the same way. We're putting red on the sides, blue on the top and the bottom. So assemble this middle 9 patch piece. So here's what the center piece looks like, and this piece will be 3.5 inches square. So now when we put it in the middle, we can see that there's going to be 3 rows, and we'll just join those rows together. Now also in this middle part, I pressed all the seams towards the light fabric. So that means on this row, they're pressed in towards this piece, and on the middle, they're pressed out. And so that helps everything go together nicely. And it also means we haven't had to press back on any of those diagonal seams. So that's how that pressing is done, in case you were wondering. But now just double check that the fabrics are matching, and then we're going to join this into rows. So here's what our rows look like when it's sewn together. And the one thing we've done with this pressing, in pressing these rows, the outside rows, we press the seams towards the inside. And this goes against how I would normally do it. Normally I would press the seams away from these triangles, but because in this piece we also have triangles, that means one of them is going to be pressed away from the triangles. So I made the decision to press this one to the outside, and then this one is pressed to the inside. And then we're just going to add the top and bottom to the section, and then we're going to be done. So here it is finished. What a cute little block. This block should be 5.5 inches square so that it will finish at 5 inches. So if you held your mouth correctly, these half square triangles will all line up so that they look like parallelograms to make this nice little star. If your fabrics didn't line up as well as you would hope they would, remember that these pieces are small and it is kind of a complicated block. So just hold it back a little bit and I'm sure it will look fine. You can find more 5-inch quilt blocks in my 5-inch block playlist and lots of other quilt blocks and quilting tutorials, patterns, and inspiration at my website, epidastudio.com.